So I'm going to invite up a brother that you may have seen recently, you may have heard of through his work creating the Amazon Labor Union, or being on the Handala, illegally arrested, or kidnapped, I should say is the right word, kidnapped by the IOF off of the Handala, beaten by seven IOF, or I should just say Israelis, and released. Please make some noise for Chris Smalls.
Thank you, Sister Nancy, and thank you all for being here tonight and inviting me back to Connecticut. And I say back because I actually lived here for 1 year. I actually opened up the Amazon warehouse here in Windsor, 2017, BDL2. That was my second building as an assistant manager. So this is sort of like home. I lived in Ellington, actually, for those who don't know. So I'm glad to be back in this space and talk about my recent actions, and not only talk about that, but talk about a little bit of my background for those who don't know how I got into the movement. Yeah, I'm sorry. Is that good? Can y'all hear me now? Yeah. All right, yeah. As my sister Nancy said, a lot of people know me for my work with forming the first union for Amazon workers in this country. I was an assistant manager for 5 years. I opened up 3 warehouses in the tri-state area. New Jersey was my first one. Connecticut was my second one in 2017. And JFK, Staten Island, 2018 to 2020. I was fired in 2020 when I led a walkout during COVID-19. As y'all remember, we were deemed essential workers. Amazon workers specifically were deemed the closest thing to the Red Cross, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. As an assistant manager who spent 60, 70 hours with workers, especially during these times, which is holiday season, I knew that wasn't right. I knew that wasn't just for us. We're human beings like everybody else, and we can't be the closest thing to the Red Cross when we're talking about a deadly virus, especially before the vaccine. So after that walkout, I was fired by somebody who y'all may know well, who was considered the richest man in the world at the time, Jeff Bezos, the owner and the CEO, former CEO of Amazon. And I like to say that I think I added to him resigning from the CEO position in 2020. For those who don't know, he did resign that year, the same year when we led this walkout, because I believe there was so much pressure and so much controversy around that it was his best interest to resign. Even though that's not really the sentiment, because he still owns about 75% of the company and still contributes to a lot of their decision making till this day. His hands is definitely all over this genocide as well. The AWS web services is the intelligence that's being used to target and kill innocent Palestinians, for those who don't know. Also, Amazon, along with Google, Microsoft, Starlink, these tech companies have invested billions of dollars, $7.2 billion to be exact, in a project called Project Nimbus, which is AKA Project the Dark Gray Cloud, where once again is the intelligence that is being used to power the Iron Dome, the intelligence that's being used to power the technology that the military uses, whether it's their drone system, whether it's their communications, whether it's the Iron Dome itself. Amazon Web Services and all of these tech companies are heavily invested into this genocide. But at the time, I didn't know that, Many people didn't know that as well. Started in this movement as the labor organizer for Amazon, but I wanted to connect all struggles. As my sister Nancy said, in the labor movement, as a trade unionist, we take a pledge, and our pledge is to the working class. And that doesn't exclude Palestinians. But unfortunately, a lot of our labor leadership in this country specifically have forgotten their oath that they took in. They've forgotten their fabric of their unions, which is an injury to one is an injury to all. And most importantly, they really forgot what their responsibility is. And I say responsibility because once you sign up to be a trade unionist, you're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting on behalf of the working class. And representation, I always tell my organizers, when people ask you, what are you fighting for, you say representation. And I saw this happen with Amazon workers during COVID, that we didn't have a voice because Amazon was spending millions of dollars to crush campaigns, crush workers' voices. But I broke through the veil because Jeff Bezos, who was making $13 billion a day, $9 million an hour, $5,000 a second, decided to have a smear campaign on little old me. And in that meeting with his top general counsel, they said to make me the face of the whole unionizing efforts against Amazon, but also, ironically, they rather answer those type of questions than answer questions about health and safety. Signed by Jeff Bezos. That conversation was leaked to the media by somebody in that room. And that also is a stigma in the black community, calling us not smart or articulate. It's something that corporate models use for decades. They use these stigmas so that when media come talking to workers, that it's not credible, that we're not smart enough to talk about workplace issues or any issue. And that is something that not just corporations use, but billionaires, even our governments. They use these type of tactics to suppress our voices, to silence us. But obviously that didn't happen because when that leak combo came out, it motivated me to continue my advocacy, even though I no longer worked at the company. So fast forward, after I was fired, I started a nonprofit called the Congress of Essential Workers, a collective of all essential workers from different sectors in the private sector and the public sector, different organizations from climate injustice to social injustice to women's rights to children's and gun rights. All of these different orgs came together during the pandemic, and we traveled and protested in front of every Jeff Bezos mansion from the East Coast to the West Coast. We did this for about a year and a half, and then in 2021, I decided to go back to the same building that fired me in Staten Island, JFK, and founded the Amazon Labor Union in April of 2021. My campaign, and I like to say that I was an inspiration to these encampments with the students because I put together an encampment outside the same facility that fired me. My encampment was up for over 300 days. Every day I was outside at this public bus stop right across the street from the building, talking to workers as they came to and from work, trying to convince them and educate them on what a union is and to join our independent worker-led union, which was the Amazon Labor Union at the time. Very difficult campaign because Amazon spent over $20 million trying to stop me. And this was before we had any major backing from any union. Nobody believed in us. We had no politician help, no political support. And pretty much we were a grassroots, scrappy group of people, individuals with all different backgrounds that came together to fight against this $2.2 trillion company, which was deemed unorganizable at the time because Amazon has been around for 30 years, ununionized in this country. And that is because they have been able to successfully crush workers' voices, as I mentioned. But we proved them wrong. We brought people together, we educated them, and we've proven that we can take down the richest man in the world and one of the most richest and powerful companies in the world by bringing people together for one common goal. The same thing that we are seeing now when it comes to the struggles for Palestine. We have already won the public opinion around the world. Countries Millions of people from around the world are coming together for one common cause. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It's never going to be handed to us. We're never going to wake up one day and politicians or our governments are going to say, you know what, we're going to put an end to this genocide just because. Everything that we have in this society, we have to fight for. The same thing when it comes to workers' rights. And our campaign was a catalyst and a resurgence to the labor movement in this country, and actually all around the world. Has it resonated on April 1st, not April Fool's Day, in 2022, when we voted in to become the first union in American history. Millions of workers were inspired. Millions of people were paying attention, but that didn't mean the fight was over. It just meant that it just begun. So fast forward 3 years later, a lot of people want to know, how did I get involved with the struggle for Palestine? Well, actually 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to do a panel discussion with Dr. Mustafa, I'm a butcher, Balgouti, yeah, my man's. And we did this panel discussion in Montreal at Concordia University. And that's when I learned about the history of Nakba, learned about the history of trade unions, the resistance, and how trade unions always stood hand in hand with the resistance since the first Nakba. And he also invited me to go to Palestine to do some humanitarian work. He invited me to Jerusalem to work with his organization. But unfortunately, that never happened. The genocide had started less than a year later, October 7th, as everybody know. But we know that this really didn't start, it just restarted. They never really stopped killing Palestinians, we all know this. And once this genocide had begun, I was actually in one of the largest Palestinian diasporas in the world. I was in Berlin, Germany. And I remember recording videos of my experience there as I saw the Nazi police kettle in the Palestinian community, tear children away from their families, their parents, arrest them, put them in zip ties, drag them away from their parents, arrest Palestinians for no reason, tear down Palestinian flags. And every protest that I attended, we weren't even allowed to say Free Palestine. The police kettled every protest, and as soon as any activist said Free Palestine, they were dragged away and arrested violently, right in front of me. And I shared this experience on my Instagram and on my social media, and overnight, I lost over 10,000 followers. People instantly said, we supported your work when you was organizing Amazon workers, but this is where I draw the line. And I couldn't believe the amount of DMs that I received from people, the amount of messages I received from people that were trying to discourage me from even speaking out about this issue. And that's when I knew that I had to double down and do the complete opposite. And not only did I, if I wasn't in the church right now, I'll tell you what I really said. But you can imagine it was along the lines of forget you. And, I felt that was a familiar feeling. The same feeling we had when we took on Amazon, when people said, you guys are a circus, or you guys will never be able to defeat this company. You guys are a waste of time. You guys are a dumpster fire. And I heard all of these things when people didn't believe in us. And that's the same feeling I had when people wrote me off for speaking out about Palestine. And so I said, you know what? Not only am I going to double down, I'm going to make sure I'm pioneering. I joined some of the students' encampments. I was at Columbia University day one, week one, and I ended up on Canary Mission. No surprise. And I wear that with a badge of honor as a labor leader in this country, because our labor unions and our labor movement And I say the majority of our labor movement, because there are some rank and files and locals who absolutely stand with Palestine, but our leadership and the majority of our labor unions in America have been complicit for the last 2 years. And as a labor leader, I'm proud to say that I'm not only one on Canary mission, but also banned from Israel for 100 years. So, and I get to thank who I call my GOAT now, Huwaida, my sister, for that badge of honor, because how I ended up on the Freedom Flotilla, I'll never forget the conversation. I was trying to get on once, like many others were inspired by, with Madeleine, with Greta Thunberg and Diago and Yasmin and all of the other great activists that were on there that got a lot of attention over the summer. I was inspired, and I said, how can I get on to the next mission? Didn't expect it to be that soon, but I was reaching out however I could to get to the Freedom Flotilla. I filled out the application, but of course they have a backlog of 30,000 or even more than that. So I was asking journalists, and then finally one journalist who interviewed Huwaida put me in touch. And I remember she called me up and said, we're leaving in 2 days. I said, shh, you know what? Sign me up without hesitation. And I like to tell people the truth. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't even tell my union, because I knew that folks were going to try to talk me out of this mission. But it wouldn't have mattered whether I told them or not, because if they know me, they know I was going to do it anyway. But the only conversation that I did have was with my children, being a father of 4 and knowing that I'm fighting not just for my children. I don't want them to grow up in a world where they have to go on their Instagram and see innocent children, men, women, being slaughtered. I don't want them to have to grow up in a world where they can't go to work and speak up about health and safety concerns without being targeted and retaliated against. And I damn sure don't want them to grow up in a world where we're living with normalizing genocide and normalizing the killing of innocent people. So as a father, as a black man, as a trade unionist, as a labor leader, and most importantly, as an American citizen whose taxpaying dollars is going towards this genocide, those were the reasons why I decided to jump on the flotilla. I wanted to spread more awareness. I wanted to reach different spaces. I wanted to reach different audiences. And I wanted to break down another stigma that was floating around, especially within the black community. Because it was a stigma that still is, because I see the comments every day and I see the comments online, that black people should sit this one out, that the fight for Palestine is not black people's fight. And I said, heard that before too. During George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Black Lives Matter movement 5 years ago, wasn't that long ago, they told black people to sit this fight out. It's time for white people to step up. And I said, that didn't come from black people. None of these stigmas, whether you're not smart or articulate, whether you're black or brown, indigenous, immigrant, when they say your job is bad, just quit, jump into another fire, that's not words that are coming from the community. These are stigmas that are being placed upon us from our oppressors and our opposition. And to break down these stigmas, sometimes we have to sacrifice. And sometimes that sacrifice comes with a great price, whether you're putting your life on the line. So just how I put my life on the line to save 2.5 million Amazon workers from contracting COVID-19 as the Amazon whistleblower, when I was fired, I cost the company $4 billion. Right. So, understanding that I had to put my life on the line, my livelihood on the line, for the greater good, I don't regret it at all, not one bit. The same thing when it comes to getting on this flotilla. I knew the risk of being the only black man out of the 21 of us that was on the Hundella. I knew the risk before I got on the flotilla. But the flotilla initiative didn't start, once again, 2 years ago. And this initiative has started over 17 years ago. So understanding that there were ancestors, there were protesters, there were activists who paved the way, who lost their lives before me, I knew that I had to carry that same burden and also carry that torch and continue my advocacy, because I wanted to break down these stigmas as once again, being a black man, facing one of the most deadliest, merciless, ruthless armies, baby killing machines in the world. I knew that they were going to single me out. And, you know, I'm so fortunate enough, the crew that I was fortunate enough to travel along an open graveyard for 7 days, the Mediterranean Sea, knew the risk as well. We all knew that we were entering a dangerous war zone. We all knew that this could potentially be a threat to our lives, and we protected one another to the best of our abilities and capabilities. And I felt safe with my crew that was on board. That being said, it also gave me the confidence to, what I like to say, talk my New York-ish when I did meet the authorities, because for a few reasons. One is, I know so many Palestinians have lost their lives just for speaking up, just for being Palestinian. And I know so many of them wanted to join this mission and want to be on these flotillas, but it's so dangerous for them and their families that they can't. And most importantly, I know so many of them would love the opportunity to express themselves in a way that makes the IOF, Israel, any of our ops crumble, because they are cowards. And on behalf of Palestinians, I didn't travel all the way across the Mediterranean for nothing, and especially not to be silent. I wanted to use my voice to be the voice on their behalf as well. So when I did see the authorities, it triggered something in me. I'll never forget the moment where we were captured and brought to shore. I think I woke up from a short nap. It wasn't really a comfortable one, because we were surrounded by guns and technology and soldiers and commandos. But I woke up that morning and I started crying. And it wasn't crying because we failed. I was crying more because I was angered. I was angry at who we were looking at, and the fact that they thought they were doing something notable, and the fact that we were so close to Gaza. I wanted to make it so bad. And I'll tell you the truth, the IOF soldiers, they look like your average college student. Most of them, the average age about 20 to 25, with big Call of Duty guns and technology, weapons. And they came on board with their propaganda coolers, thinking that they were going to give us sandwiches and water. We already declared the hunger strike, so we canceled that out. And that was the most frustrating part about it, was that we were delivering prosthetic parts, food, baby formula, women care products, humanitarian aid, and they were trying to give us aid, food and water, and kept asking us, were we okay? Do we need medical attention? And I said, you know what? How about give it to the people of Gaza? And our entire crew had that same message and sentiment. Give it to the kids and children of Gaza who are starving. As this boat that carried all this aid was loaded with stuffed animals and toys, which also angered me as they watched us gather these toys to bring and collect these toys as we were being transferred to the immigration department. But I can tell you this last thing. Before I exited the boat, I looked a few of the IOF soldiers in their faces, and I pointed at them. And I said, without those guns, without those weapons, without our American taxpaying dollars, and I will curse this time, I said, you ain't shit. And I said it repeatedly. Yeah. And I said that several times. I pointed at them because I knew, once again, I wasn't saying it just for I was saying it for all of the Palestinians who can't say it, because they know they will be killed instantly. Or even worse, they'll kill other members, harm other members on the crew. But I knew my crew was supportive. We all were screaming, "Free Palestine." We were singing a song that we created on the boat, the Handela, which is now something that's being sung around the world. And as I got off, 7 authorities threw me to the ground. 3 on each side, carried me off like an animal. 1 was pulling my chains to choke me, and they separated me from the crew. And I remember hearing Huwaida's voice. I remember hearing it clearly saying, "Chris, we're right here with you. Where are you taking them?" As she was screaming to fight for my behalf. And I heard the crew in the next room asking, "Where is Chris? Where is Chris?" As the 5 guards heavily guarded me after they assaulted me. And I knew, once again, what to expect, that I was going to be singled out and mistreated throughout the entire process. So that being said, I still elected to go to see the judge. And going to prison, it got worse. That's when the psychological warfare began. They kept us isolated, 24/7 lockdown, because that was the punishment for being on a hunger strike. But they weaponized the food. They would come in there every day and sit food on our table to ask us to eat it, and we refused. We just wanted water. We knew the water wasn't going to be clean water. It was mostly cloudy, probably contaminated, but that was our only way to survive. In the heat wave, it was 90 degrees. They put 7 of us in 1 cell, knowing that the oxygen level was very poor. They raided us twice with the raid unit for no reason, knowing that we couldn't smuggle anything, made us strip naked to humiliate us. They lied to us every day. They would make us get dressed, make us get up every hour, knowing that we wasn't going home, especially when it came to me and my Arab brother Hatem from Tunisia. We were left in there the longest. We were left in there for 5 days. And not only were we the last to leave compared to our white counterparts who were also in prison, who were taken directly to Tel Aviv airport to be deported, me and my Arab brother Hatem was not. We were dropped off in the middle of the desert at the border of Jordan. Everything from the very beginning to the very ending when we were released was racially motivated, racially charged. I can confirm for you that Israel is not only an apartheid state, but a racist apartheid state. And that confirmation comes from lived experience, but also every authority that we encountered, every single one of them has such a hatred that it resonated. I've never experienced that amount of hatred, bigotry, and racism within those 5 days compared to my 37 years here in the US. And that says a lot as a black man coming from America, who's been in handcuffs since I was 10 years old. So I can confirm once again that Palestinians cannot live peacefully amongst Israeli authorities of that nature. I don't believe in a two-state solution. I believe that it should be a one-state solution. I believe that it should be the people of Palestine. And I believe that we will see a free Palestine within our lifetime because resistance can't be killed. And that's what our oppositions failed to realize. They can bomb Gaza. They can propagandize, buying our media, trying to control our narratives. But one thing about resistance is that it can't be killed, it can't be bombed. It only evolves, it only gets stronger. And the experience that I had was just a glimpse of what Palestinians have to go through every day. And understanding that, I understand that there's no way that we must give up here. There's no way that you can sit back and be complicit. There's no way. Because if your complicity is just watching on Instagram or on social media and you're not saying anything about it, you are a part of the problem. We all have a role to play in this resistance movement. Doesn't mean you have to get on the flotilla, but it does mean you have to do something. So ask yourself, what is that something? If you don't get up and do the work, who's coming for you? Because there's no Calvary coming for us. And they say, we keep us safe. That's the real suit. That's the real sentiment. We are the people who keep us safe. Our governments, our politicians are never going to be our saviors. It's always going to be the people. And just how we've proven taking on the $2.2 trillion company with Amazon, when people ask, how the hell was you able to do that? The answer is simple. The answer is right here in this room. It's the power of people when we come together. No amount of money, no amount of evil can amount to the power of people when we come together. This revolution, and I do say it is a revolution, this revolution that we're experiencing now, it's going to look different. It may be retroactive because unfortunately a lot of people have to wait until it directly impacts them for them to get motivated. But the revolution, it actually starts right with yourself. When you go home, as I mentioned, we all have something to sacrifice. Ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because if you talked about Palestine, I promise you, you lost something. We all lost something. But that sacrifice is worth it in the long run. So make it worth it. If you're going to be in this movement, understand that this is a lifetime movement. And you cannot have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It doesn't work that way. You have to be fully committed. You have to be fully ready to lose something, whether it's financial gains, whether it's job opportunities, whether it's friendships, and yes, even relationships. You will lose something, but we must. Love and solidarity is how we're going to win. And the people of Palestine shall be free. And in the words of Malcolm X, you can't have racism without capitalism. And when we're talking about capitalism, the only way capitalism thrives is by fear, division, and doubt. Those three things. We can't allow that. It's time for us to step up, people. And I'm so happy and hopeful for our future, because I know, especially with Huwaida and the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, who's pledged to send flotilla after flotilla. The same thing with the students in these encampments around the world, several of them which I visit. And the people that I've met in this journey, that once again, we will see a free Palestine within our lifetime. Thank you for having me. Oh, yeah.
Look at me. No, you're good. It's not your fault, I'm sure. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Our next speaker, you should know who she is. Not only is she a lawyer, she's also the co-founder of the International Solidarity Movement, the ISM, and she is on the steering committee of the Freedom Flotilla. And most importantly, she is a consistent, dedicated, committed Palestinian, I was going to say strong woman. I'm editing myself. Please put your hands together for Huwaida Arraf.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. It's hard to follow my brother Chris, but I am going to try. And let me start by thanking Eyewitness Palestine for the incredible work that you guys do. I was fortunate enough to co-lead 3 or 4 Eyewitness Palestine delegations and to sit on the board many years ago, and I'm thrilled to see that they continue to do such critical programming. And I want to thank you for being here, and more importantly, for refusing to be silent, because that's what we're here to talk about. Because I think all too often people think that silence is neutrality and they don't have to pick a side, but silence is not neutral. Silence is not peace. Silence is not safety. Silence is the language that power demands when it knows it can't survive the truth. And that's why we're seeing such a big crackdown on our very right to speak. Silence is how violence becomes policy, and silence is how crimes become normalized. You know, yesterday I was talking to Nancy about this last night. My kids go to a Lutheran school, and so last night they had this big event, their Christmas program or play about the birth of Jesus. And so while I was in the sanctuary with hundreds of parents and teachers and kids, I was fuming, honestly. All this talk about Bethlehem and the coming of the Savior, and the way they did their play, it was a Bethlehem News Network about the coming of the Savior. But do any one of them even know what's happening in Bethlehem today? Is that what Jesus came to teach the world, to be silent in the face of injustice? And even though it was probably wrong, while I was in the car with my daughter going home, I expressed my disappointment. And my 11-year-old daughter said, "But Mama, not everything has to be about politics. It was about Jesus." And I said, you know what? It does today have to be about politics, because it's about life and death. What we're facing today is so evil. It's so evil that we need everybody to rise up against it. Every single one of those people, those parents, those teachers that are talking about the coming of Jesus, talking about Bethlehem, let that not just be rhetoric. Let us truly care. Let us truly care about one another and do something about when our fellow humans are suffering, because otherwise it's just performative. And that's what we see around us so much today. You know, myself, one of the ways that there is kind of performance and a covering of what's really happening in this pacifying, I think, is a program that I was actually involved in many, many years ago, and it was what took me to Palestine after I graduated. I was born and raised here in the United States. My parents are both from Palestine. My father is from the Galilee, so we're Israeli citizens, and my mother is from the West Bank town of Beit Sahod, which is right near Bethlehem. But I went to Palestine after I graduated from college, thinking that I was going to work with this conflict resolution program that brought people together, youth, Israelis and Palestinians, to talk about, you know, getting to know each other and breaking down these stereotypes and walls of hatred and building a better future for everybody. And quickly I realized that not only is my place not in this program, and not because I don't want to talk to people who disagree with me, not because I disagree with talking to anybody, but because these programs are built up to pacify, to normalize occupation. When you are, there's nothing wrong with talking, disagreement, co-working, co-struggle, but what is a big problem is creating programs where you can pretend that now you have friends on the other side, but you are actually doing nothing to dismantle systems of oppression. And there are so many of those programs today that want us to listen to the other side and to listen to both sides and be neutral. Yes, it's true that everybody deserves equal rights and freedom, but that is not what we have today, and it's clear why we don't have that today. It's because we have a settler colonial apartheid system that is clearly denying freedom and equal rights to one side. And so we don't pretend that that doesn't exist and that we just have to talk about it. We have to do the work to dismantle that, and that is why I quickly left that program and co-founded with Palestinians and Israelis what is the International Solidarity Movement as a way to globalize the Intifada. Now, I know globalize the Intifada is now a term that is going to get you arrested in the UK and probably maybe here in the United States soon, because they are cracking down on our speech. What does globalize the Intifada mean? The Intifada, the Palestinian Intifada, was a shaking off of oppression. It is a call for freedom. It is a rising up of people for freedom and liberation. And that is what is so threatening. Palestinians trying to do that alone for decades in the occupied Palestinian territory were silenced in the most brutal ways, tortured, maimed, killed. And so when we said globalize the Intifada, we wanted to bring people from around the world to see what was happening with their own eyes, to stand side by side with Palestinians, not because they are against Israelis or Jews, but because we are on the side of freedom. And we started the International Solidarity Movement. I don't have time to go too much into it, but in 2001, and it still operates today, where people from around the world, despite Israel's violence and despite efforts to keep people out, despite bans that banned people from Palestine for 100 years, are still trying to go to the occupied Palestinian territories and witness and stand with Palestinians. And one of the most important things that they do is they're able to go back to their home countries and spread the word about what's happening and participate in local actions, because everything we have to bring back locally, in local actions to disrupt here so that we can change. And that is one thing that Palestinians always say, thank you for being here, but go back and change the policies of your government, because without the policies of your government, our oppression here would not be happening, would not be possible. And it's from the ISM that the flotilla movement started. Because when we first started the ISM, we could send delegations to Gaza, and some of you might know a couple of our colleagues that were murdered in Gaza. In 2003, Israel ran over our colleague, 23-year-old Rachel Corrie from Seattle, from Olympia, Washington, crushed her to death with a Caterpillar bulldozer, never was held accountable, and only weeks later, because they did not hold themselves accountable and because the United States did not hold them accountable, They shot 21-year-old Tom Herndal from the UK in the back of the head. What was he doing in Gaza? When he was shot, he was trying to move Palestinian children out of the line of Israeli gunfire. And he was sniped in the back of the head, lay in coma for 9 months, and then he died. And it's not like there was any kind of accountability after that either. What Israel then did is said, well, no more internationals can go into Gaza. And that was 2003, so we weren't able to send delegations into Gaza. And in 2006, Israel imposed this near hermetic closure on Gaza under the guise of security because Hamas was in control of Gaza. But we knew it had nothing to do with security. And we weren't able to get into Gaza, so what could we do? And one comrade had the idea, well, let's sail a boat to Gaza. And honestly, I had, at the time, thought that was a stupid idea because we didn't have a boat, we had no money to get a boat, and none of us knew the first thing about operating a boat. So I initially kind of brushed it off. Thankfully, some of my comrades did not, and they started raising the money to try to get ourselves a small boat so that we can go challenge the Israeli Navy. And about a year and a half later, it was the summer of 2008, we had 2 small fishing boats. 44 of us were in Cyprus, and we declared that we are going to Gaza. And despite Israel's threats to not let us in because they have a naval blockade on Gaza, we said we're going, and we're not backing down. And if Israel's going to stop us, let them attack us at sea. And we set sail. And as we were training, and Chris went through our trainings, we had people from 17 different countries. Old, young, teachers, parliamentarians, medics, dancers, artists, sailors, people who had lives, who had family to go back to, nobody that had a death wish, but we had to make sure that everybody understood we don't know what Israel is going to do. They are threatening us. They could sink our boats. They could maim us. They could kill us. Best case scenario, maybe no one will get hurt and we'll just end up in prison. And I clearly said, you know, if you're not ready to do that, then don't step foot on those boats, and that is totally fine. We actually need a lot of ground support. We need people to spread the word. It's fine if you're not on those boats. But not one person turned away. And again, it's not because anyone had, you know, a savior complex or a death wish. It was because we firmly believe that we cannot witness these systems of injustice and not directly confront them. And our governments were enabling them. Our governments were enabling them, and I naively at the time believed that if the world knew what Israel was really doing, it wouldn't stand for it, right? Because Israel was telling the world this is all about security, right? And we knew it wasn't about security. So let's expose to the world that this is not about security. Here we are, civilians on a fishing boat heading to Gaza. We constitute no threat. If Israel's going to attack us at sea, which we'd be ready for, let at least the world see that this is not about security. It's about punishing an entire civilian population. It is about using these coercive means and deadly means, because the blockade, even back then, 2006, 7, 8, even back then was killing Palestinians. It not only destroyed the economy, people were dying because they couldn't get the medical aid that they needed. And the world justified it by accepting that Israel had security concerns. So Palestinians could die daily, be killed, because Israel had security concerns. Security concerns that were premised on the fact that they believe they can be secure in maintaining a settler colonial occupation and brutalizing Palestinians every day but not face any kind of repercussions. This is the kind of mentality, this is how far and how much Palestinians have been dehumanized. I know you know all this, but all of this to say that back then, I naively thought we just have to expose, because the mainstream media wasn't exposing what Israel was doing. Let our action do it, and let then the world rise up and change and stop Israel. And I say naive because back then we didn't have social media, today we do. And Palestinians are live streaming their own genocide in the hopes that it will bring about change, that someone will stop Israel. And it's been over 2 years, not 2 years of a genocide, because a genocide has been going on for much longer, which in question and answer I'd be happy to go into. But over 2 years of an accelerated genocide where people are being slaughtered daily, where a famine is deliberately engineered, and we are seeing it, where human rights organizations and humanitarian organizations are saying that we are not being allowed to bring in aid to help people, as parents are picking up the body parts of their children, and we're all seeing it every day, and we have not been able to stop Israel. That is an indictment on all of us. Not because we don't care. As my brother Chris said, millions around the world do care and are rising up. But we have to recognize then what our leaders are doing, what they're trying to do in their attempt to silence us, which is allows the genocide and the oppression and whole-scale slaughter of Palestinians to happen today. But that is a world in which none of us are safe tomorrow. Those first votes in 2008, while we were at sea, Israel had cut off all our communications. We had a few satellite phones. We couldn't reach anybody. But you know what happened? When we were a few miles outside of Gaza and we were preparing for an attack and we have no media and no phones, nothing, suddenly a satellite phone of one of the journalists rang, and then came the news. Israel just announced they are not going to stop your boats. And we couldn't believe it. Nobody had ever gotten into the occupied Palestinian territory, Gaza, in over 40 years of the occupation back then without Israel's permission. And so we were elated and laughing and crying and jumping up and down, and then I was worried because I was like, shoot, that is the only scenario we didn't prepare for, that we would actually make it into Gaza. But we did on August 23rd, 2008. And it was honestly one of the most beautiful moments of my life, because when we got close to Gaza, you could see that tens of thousands of people had come to the port to meet us. Tens of thousands of people that were cheering, and people jumping on fishing boats to sail out to us, and people jumping into the water to swim out to us. And they treated us like heroes, which we weren't, obviously. It's the least that we could do, right? It's the least that we can do, but you also saw such joy on the faces of people who were really every day fighting for their very survival up against this brutal military force that was trying to annihilate them with the help of the countries that we were coming from. We were mainly from Europe and the United States. And yet they received us with such joy and love and gratitude, completely different from the image that is broadcast around the world about what Palestinians and who Palestinians are. A people, they have been so vilified and yet never. Yes, I'm a Palestinian, but I don't even understand how my own people, like when they haven't seen a day of freedom in your lifetime, and every day you're struggling against a brutal military force trying to get rid of you with the complicity, or at best the silence and the complacency of the entire world, then how do you hang on to your humanity and be able to express such love for life and for people and receive them so warmly? But they do, somehow. And every day they continue to insist on life. And the next day, I was with the delegation in Gaza, in Khan Yunis, which today has been totally destroyed. But an elderly man, in his 70s maybe, came up to me with tears in his eyes. And I really was at a loss for what to say, because he thanked me. And I'm like, don't thank me. I mean, it's the very least that we can do. And with full tears streaming down his face, he said, you gave us hope that people outside haven't forgotten us. And so when it gets like tiring, or you feel like your actions here don't matter, they matter. They matter. And the Palestinians that have connectivity, that have phones, see what you're doing. And that helps them hang on to hope. So I hope that you hold on to that and let it encourage you every single day, because as my brother Chris said, we all need to be doing something. We all need to be doing something. You don't have to be on a flotilla, for sure. And actually, I always say the most important work is done by those on the ground, because we will continue, and we have continued sending boats. It's not new. A lot of people woke up to the flotilla movement this past year. But we continued sending boats, and in 2010, we actually sent a huge flotilla that Israel lethally attacked and killed 10 of our colleagues on board the flagship of the 2010 Freedom Flotilla called the Mavi Marmara. But that did not stop us. And we continued to try because we made a promise to Palestinians that that day in August of 2008, we got through the blockade once, but we had not broken it, and we intend to break it. We intend to break it. And so when we left Gaza a few days later, we said that we will not let this be a one-time action. We will keep going back and forth. We will encourage others to come with us until we effectively open a sea route to Gaza. And in end of 2008, 2009, Israel started attacking us, trying to stop us. In 2010, they killed 10 of our colleagues, but people did not stop. And we sailed this past summer, not just once, but a few times. And it's not only Israel that's been trying to stop us. Israel has colluded with other countries. Cyprus doesn't let us leave from there anymore. Greece stopped us a number of times. Turkey, which speaks, about supporting Palestinians, stopped us. All of these countries we know the ways the United States are complicit, but every single country that is actually not doing something to challenge, to defy the blockade is part of it. It's part of it, because in what world does a country that has been credibly determined by every major human rights organizations and genocide scholars and legal scholars and the United Nations Fact-Finding Commission and is on trial for genocide and has been determined to be committing genocide by all of these bodies, in what world are they allowed to determine what aid can get to a people that they are actively exterminating? That is the world that they want us to accept, by saying that they're going to negotiate with Israel about letting things in. We have to defy that. We have to refuse that. And no country, well, with the exception of a few, like South Africa that is taking Israel to court and a couple of others, but otherwise every single country, including these big Arab Muslim countries that show big advertisements of their aid boats going to El Arish, right? They go to El Arish, they go to Egypt, and then send their aid to Rafah, to sit in long lines of thousands of trucks waiting to get in, waiting till Israel allows this aid to get in. That is accepting that a genocider is able to decide if people can live or die. And that is why our flotilla is critical that we continue, because we have to continue to expose that we are not accepting this world. We are not accepting it. And so yes, we will take to sea to directly challenge it, because it needs to be challenged. We cannot be complying with it, and we have to expose what our countries are doing. We have to put them on the line and say, your own civilians are at sea going up to confront one of the most brutal militaries in the world because you're not doing it. Because you're not doing it. We will. But that action, that direct action confrontation has got to be brought back home here. And this summer we saw unions refusing to unload weapons ship or to load weapons ship. We saw Italy shut down, really, cities and countries, and we need more of that action. We need vigils. We need to disrupt things here, because we will continue to send flotillas, and we're working now. Just last week, I think I came back from a meeting where we are planning the next flotilla. And people might ask, well, they don't get in, so what? So we will make them bigger, and we will continue to take to sea. Just because they shut us down or they beat us down, that doesn't mean we give up. We take again, and we recruit more people to be part of this movement. Not necessarily on the boat, so if you want to go on the boats, you can certainly apply, but translating that into direct action here at home. We have to disrupt. We have to disrupt. And I will just end with what I told my daughter, and I firmly believe this. I said, Mama, one day, people will look back and say, how did we allow this to happen? One day when genocide is no longer, can no longer be denied, when it can no longer be explained away, the world will look back in horror and said, and ask the question of how we allowed this to happen. And what did we do when we knew? We could care, but did we do anything with that care? Or did we decide that I can't do anything, or I'm tired, or we've been doing this for months or years and it hasn't changed anything. I believe that history won't be kind to those of us who talked about, oh, well, it's too complex or there's too much of a personal cost to be paid. History will not be kind. It will judge whether we recognized that what's happening today is not just about Palestine, but is about all of our futures, and that all of our futures are bound to this moment. That the normalization of mass slaughter, the rise of oligarchy, the weaponization of AI for surveillance, the censorship, the killing, the deliberate dismantling of international laws, these are not separate crises. They are all bound together, meant to silence us, meant to make us complacent. Will we give in to that? Will we give in to that? And this is a point where silence becomes surrender. And it could be a silence because some people don't care. It could be a silence because some people are not willing to pay the price. It could be a silence that comes from despair. But in the end, it's silence that allows evil to fester and to grow. Let not what they declared now to be a ceasefire, we know it's not a ceasefire. We know it's not a ceasefire. That, I firmly believe, was done to make us complacent, right? To quiet us down, because there is outrage all over the world. But this is not a time to give up. I know you guys are seeing the news, right? Since the so-called ceasefire, Israel has killed at least 400 people, is not letting aid surge in. I mean, UNICEF, the UN, is saying we have weatherproof tents, at least 100,000 for 100,000 families, right? And Israel is not letting them in, or at least not to scale. It is infants are continuing to die from starvation. Why aren't you allowing in enough baby formula? Why aren't you allowing in tents? Because these are dual use items? What, so Palestinians, because they can use them to survive? Right, so Palestinians, their tents are being blown away, they're being flooded, they're living, and not just in water. Can you imagine being out in this cold, this kind of cold, but also being soaked, and your mattresses are soaked, and your clothes are soaked, and you don't have change, and you're hungry, and you can't keep your kids warm? And it's not just water. It's not just your tents are flooded with water, it's sewage water. It's sewage, and so these tents are also infested with rats, and vermin, and disease. I don't know how people are surviving, and many are not. We know that we're not getting the numbers of how many Palestinians are perishing, not just from bombs and gunshots, but from this deliberate policy. And that is happening every day, and Palestinians continue to try to show it in the hopes that someone will stop Israel. But it doesn't have to be it's someone, it's someone's, it's each and every one of us. Right? It's each and every one of us. So it can't be business as usual. We have to rebuild power from below. We must, because if genocide, again, if genocide can be live streamed, if it can be justified algorithmically, if it can be legally shielded, and we see just today Trump sanctioned 2 more International Criminal Court justices, right, to try to break and silence international law, to make people afraid to turn to the law. If all of that can be done, then no future is safe. No one's future is safe. So what we do now will determine whether history records us as witnesses who watched, or as people who rose, resisted, and changed the course of what is possible. Let's make sure that history records that we rose up, that we weren't silent. Thank you.
Huwaida. Thank you, thank you. I know we went a little over, so quick plug. If you go to, this is really interesting, if you go to www.eyewitnesspalestine.org, you can make donations there. And or you can get some merch in the back, or you can just make a donation to the folks at the merch table. That was great, right? But please do support our programming, our in-person delegations. The next one we have is Indigenous. It's a Black Indigenous People of Color delegation. I think we have 2 or 3 spots left, and it's going in February. And then we have one in May. There are a couple others going in March, but they're full. And then we have one in May. So if you're interested, you can go to the website as well and go to apply. I do want to let you know that there's a new website launching. It's the same website, but we're changing it up to match who we are today. And it'll be up and running at the end of the month. So when you do go to our website right now, don't mind that it's really boring and dry. It was one of the last things on the list to do for this year. Does anybody have any questions for our guests? Don't be shy. It's always the first bit. There you go. There you go. I'm gonna bring the mic to you. I need to get some steps in. I'm lying.
Thank you both of you guys for being here. It really means a lot, and it's really inspiring for us. One thing I wanted to ask this question to Chris, because I think this is something I was thinking about was in the U.S. There's a lot of organizing we've done here. We interface a lot with a lot of unions, and I think like this, particularly there's union for Crack River, which is a company that makes some of the weapons responsible for the genocide, like maybe 10 minutes away from here. And I just wanted to ask, like, how do we get, in the case in which unions are materially benefiting from the genocide, how do we, how do we engage with people like that?
Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Just hold that.
Okay. I'll hold the next few mics.
Like a tech person. Oh, you
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, great question. So yeah, you're right. Our unions have unfortunately been infested with Zionism as well. I discovered this myself, being catapulted into this leadership position in the labor movement. I met a lot of trade unions over the last few years, especially in the US, but also around the world. And I can tell you it's night and day. I can leave the country and go to Canada right now and get a heart surgery for $0. That obviously was something that was a policy created because unions fought for it. We can go overseas to Italy, as Huwaida mentioned. They've been on general strike. The first one was the beginning of November. The last one was just a few weeks ago, Black Friday. And actually, I was involved with a coalition that I put together called Disarm Genocide, which working with these trade unions on the international level. I just got off the call again today with Italy. So I'm gonna give y'all, Jim, stay tuned, because Italy is gonna call another general strike in the near future, top of the year, for the people of Palestine. And what we have to do here in the US, to answer your question, we have to hold our labor unions accountable. Labor unions are supposed to be the shield for the working class. And as I mentioned before, they have a responsibility to the entire working class that doesn't exclude Palestinians. We need to pressure their leadership, because it's not the rank and file. Most rank and file members are already pro-Palestine. But there are a lot of members that are uneducated because of various reasons, distractions. They have to work multiple jobs. They don't understand the struggle. They're not in these activism spaces. So the burden's not on them. We have to reach them. And most importantly, what I tell my workers, if you want to organize, you got to meet people where they at. And where they at is at work. So when you're going to these ports, when you go into these warehouses to educate the workers, don't blame them for going to work. Blame the leadership, which is the trade union's leadership, who have been infested with Zionism. Some of their leaders have took the trip to Israel, have kissed the wall, have stocks and bonds, have relationships with Israeli trade unions, who have been actively fighting against resolutions here in the U.S. All of this is happening right now as we speak. And yes, for the last 2 years, zero ports in the U.S. have been shut down. Zero. I don't care what people are saying online about, oh, we did an action at the ports. These ports are not shutting down because we do demonstrations there. We have to apply more pressure to the leadership. So what I've done since I've been released 3 months ago, I started a coalition called Disarm Genocide. And you can go on our website right now, disarmgenocide.org, sign our petition, which has been signed by over 5,000 people, to get involved with our demonstrations that are holding these leaderships accountable. The ILA, the Longshoremen Association on the East Coast, and on the West Coast, the ILWU, who has a history of standing on the right side of history when they fought back and shut down their ports for the South African apartheid. But they have lost their way when it comes to Palestine. And I'm discovering from doing these initiatives and demonstrations that the leadership, once again, have committees that are lobbying for Israel. Some of these committees have been formed since 1958. And they are right there within our labor union umbrella. So hold your unions accountable, educate your workers, and meet the people where they at.
All right, we got time for one more question. Anybody itching to ask something? I mean, I'm not itching, but... Don't make a wrong move, I'll be like... No, that's it? All right, thank you very much. Oh yeah, hold on 1 second.
Sorry, let me just make another plug for Eyewitness Palestine, because one of the things I witnessed doing international solidarity work for all of the years, I won't tell you how much, I don't know how old I am, how long it's been, but one of the things I witnessed is just the transformative power of being in Palestine, because, and my late colleague Rachel Corey said it, it's no amount of books you read, talks you attend, documentaries you can watch can prepare you for what you see on the ground. You can think you know it, but you don't. And most importantly, you won't feel it until you are on the ground. Feel how I don't even know how to find the right word for it, but how incredibly dystopian, really, it is to see such a kind, beautiful, loving people who just want to live and who will give you the little that they have, will welcome you. If you don't come as an occupier, if you come just as an equal, as a friend, will welcome you into their homes and give you all that they have, up against the system that they're forced to live under. Which apartheid, I don't think adequately describes what is happening. So juxtapose that beauty of the nature of the people with such an evil system that is allowed to exist today because we are not tearing it down. That stays with you. And that stays with every delegate who goes to Palestine. And I've seen it, I've co-led 3-4 delegations and worked with a lot of other internationals. They don't forget Palestine, and it motivates them to come home. And it is those people who have had that first-hand experience that are on the front line of these demonstrations, that are active in Palestine Action in the UK, and that have shut down weapons systems, that are leading BDS actions around the world. Doesn't necessarily have to start with being there, but being there is transformative, and the people don't forget, and then they go home and do the work that is necessary to make the change. So please do support the work of Eyewitness Palestine, because they are doing really important work. And as Nancy mentioned, they had some state representatives go. We know what APAC is doing and making sure that every member of Congress gets to go on their funded trips. We're not up to their capacity yet, but we're doing what we can. And so this work is important to support.
And for those that can't go to Palestine right now, you can go to YouTube, type in Eyewitness Palestine Virtual Delegations. We have a whole bunch of different delegations. Every month we take you to somewhere different in Palestine. So there are some really beautifully produced videos. They're like 10-15 minutes long on different places in Palestine, from Ramallah, Balata refugee camp. The end of this month we're going to Taibi, which is the last fully Christian village in the West Bank that has been subject to a large number of violent attacks by the settlers, like most of the other villages in the West Bank. And you can check out the virtual delegations on YouTube, so you can watch. It will probably encourage you to want to go. Inshallah. Thank you so much.